So super excited about seeing this huge titan of a matchup between James Baek and Wolfe Glick, as James leads with Excadrill Togekiss, and we see Wolfe lead with Indeedee Snorlax.
So no Trick Room coming out from Wolfie's end, and this is kind of reminds me a lot of Marcus and Ashton's game yesterday, where Togekiss and Excadrill just put on a lot of pressure, right? You can Earthquake, you can, if you have Helping Hand, Earthquake. If there's Swords Dance, you can go for that. Togekiss, if it has Yawn, can also go for a Yawn. So while Wolfie is able to get the Belly Drum off here, the question is at what cost?
Ooh, well, Excadrill goes for the Sword Stance right off the bat, maybe trying to make a call from Wolfe that Wolfe isn't going to connect, but Mystical Fire finds its mark onto the Togekiss. So that was a safe play coming out from James, well, albeit risky.
Yeah, I think a double up onto the Excadrill could have, kind of spelled disaster here, but I think it's very, very rarely does Wolfie ever go for a play like that because the Belly Drum is so free. So, James kind of going for a Dazzling Gleam just to get some damage off, and it really pays off for him here. The Excadrill does not take any damage. Snorlax does get the Belly Drum off, but now this Excadrill is at +2 attack, so it's able to do a ton of damage with Earthquake. So for James, you could pretty easily just go for something like a Follow Me and Earthquake to get guaranteed damage, knock out the Indeedee, and do a lot of damage to the Gigantamax Snorlax as well. I think Wolfie most certainly has to go for the Gigantamax and start, dishing out damage here with the Snorlax.
Seeing Wolfe hover over these different moves definitely looks like they are going to go for the Gigantamax here and try to just dish out as much damage as possible with the Snorlax that got the Belly Drum off.
Yeah, and one thing that makes the Snorlax really interesting is that it does have Max Steel Spike, so it's able to, get super effective damage off against the Togekiss, but of course, you might want to go for that G-Max Replenish, which is the option Wolfie committed to this turn to try to get the berry back. However, I think the fact that Snorlax has already taken so much damage and is up against a boosted Excadrill makes this pretty tricky for Wolfie's end.
Especially because we're going to see a Protect. Ooh, that's actually a really heads-up play from James, knowing that there might be some big damage coming out from Wolfe's Snorlax. So Excadrill gets a chance to go for the Earthquake, which is going to completely bypass this Follow Me from Indeedee, and that does so much damage, knocks out Indeedee, and does a decent amount to Wolfe's Snorlax before it goes for this G-Max Replenish. It's not going to do much of anything through this. Oh, actually, that does a lot of damage through the Protect.
Yeah, it does a lot, but it doesn't pick up the knockdown. Snorlax also does not find its berry. That last Earthquake did just over half of what Wolfe's HP was at with that Snorlax. By not going for that Steel Spike, doesn't get the knockout onto Togekiss and doesn't get a defense boost. So I think James in a really commanding position now. The reason why keeping Togekiss around is so important is because you have another turn of Follow Me pressure, basically protecting the Excadrill. Wolfie can't even go for the Speed Swap option here because the Togekiss can just Follow Me that away. So it's pretty safe from James' end to just go for something like a Follow Me Earthquake. And yeah, the fact that Excadrill hasn't taken any damage yet means that it still has its Focus Sash intact as well.
Yeah, so another Follow Me coming out from James's Togekiss, just that extra pressure that you mentioned to draw that attention away. So this Rabombi's Moonblast is going to find its mark there. Togekiss does get knocked out, but I feel like Togekiss has gotten the job done that it wants to as Earthquake comes out into the Max Guard. But that's a turn of Gigantamax lost here for Wolfe.
Yeah, that's another turn down, and Trick Room is still not up, so that's what makes this so tricky. If James doesn't have the Dragapult in the back, Rabombi could go for a Speed Swap now. You will have a very fast Snorlax, but if James has the Dragapult out, you could just bring out the Dragapult, max it, target the Rabombi, and that effectively ends the game. So this is why Gigantamax Snorlax is, a tricky Pokemon to use, especially if Trick Room doesn't go up. The Follow Me last turn was just a safe play from James, and there is that Dragapult, making it, I think, really difficult for Wolfie to win this game now.
Yeah, what can you do if you're Wolfe? I mean, try to get maybe as much damage off as possible onto the Dragapult, but is even a move from the Snorlax going to be enough to one-hit knock out this Dragapult before Snorlax gets knocked out itself?
Yeah, I think the main thing that's just so tricky is that the Rabombi, you normally want to bring it out for Speed Swap, but the thing is, even getting a Speed Swap off against for the Snorlax is still getting outsped by the Dragapult. So Dragapult just being the fastest Pokemon pretty much in the format makes this pretty tough. So I think James here can pretty easily go for the Dynamax on Dragapult, just go for an attack on Slurperbombi and then target the Snorlax with Excadrill. I see little reason for him not to do that, especially because at this point, it's pretty safe to commit the Dragapult Dynamax, especially because the NDD is knocked out. If NDD was still around, you'd have to be a little bit careful because it can redirect those Max Phantasms away, but I think James in a commanding position does end up going for that Dynamax, which I think is correct.
Dynamax maybe just to seal the deal in order to dish out big damage. Looking at Max Airstream as its move of choice right into the Rabombi will secure the knockout, and that leaves Excadrill free to just get a single targeted, maybe even Earthquake onto this Snorlax.
Let's see. Either way, yeah, I think probably want to opt for Iron Head here just for more consistent damage, but actually does go for the Earthquake, does cover switch outs, and Snorlax is able to hang on with 6 HP. But
yeah.
This Excadrill's stuck on the field for the entirety of the game, right? Like, it finally takes a big hit, but at this point, I think it might be a little bit too late with Dragapult just exerting so much pressure, as Excadrill actually faints as well, so reveals that it doesn't have Focus Sash, which is actually a really big deal in this matchup.
Hatterene coming out as Wolf's last Pokemon, and Snorlax, maybe a bit of a different variant than what we're seeing Wolf run, but Snorlax also being James's last Pokemon. But I feel like the speed is still very much in James's favor. Dragapult's going to be able to move first on the field, especially if Hatterene even tries to go for a Trick Room here. I don't think you can, though, if you're Hatterene.
It's really tricky here. I mean, I think, like, Dragapult does have to watch out for Trick Room going up, so you want to go for a Max Phantasm onto that slot. If you're worried that the Hatterene has Protect, that could be scary, but it looks like James is just going to commit the Phantasm. And Wolf has to set up Trick Room to win this game, but that Phantasm will just get the one-hit KO and effectively seal up this game for James.
Yeah, defense falling, that's going to be a big problem for the Snorlax coming through, even though Wolf's Snorlax isn't sitting on too much HP, so Darkest Lariat getting committed from James, and that'll be enough to deal the last bit of damage necessary for James to take game 1.
Yeah, really interesting game there where, despite Wolfie having a bunch of Trick Room options, doesn't go with either Dusclops or the Hatterene. As a result, you have...
Well, let's get into game 2 and see whether or not those leads ended up changing at all for either of these players. In fact, does. We talked about maybe preserving Dragapult for the back, but looks like Dragapult is here to stay for James alongside Excadrill, and Wolf making that adjustment that you mentioned, bringing in Dusclops to potentially set this Trick Room early.
Yeah, Dusclops is out, but it's actually Snorlax, no NDD, so there's no redirection support, which means that James is free to go for a Max Phantasm onto the Dusclops and click something like Earthquake with the Excadrill. However, Wolfie has that Ally Switch on Dusclops, so if you expect the Phantasm coming out into the Dusclops slot, something like an Ally Switch and a Belly Drum would actually be a super free play for Wolfie's end here. But yeah, the big question is James able to call this first turn correctly? Is Wolfie able to call it correctly? I think whoever does will have such a monumentous lead in this matchup. So I can't believe the Dragapult actually came out, but here it is, and ends up working in James's favor. No NDD this time around from Wolfie.
No, indeedy. That might be a problem in order to get this Trick Room up safely. We saw that Wolf is deciding to go with the Ally Switch, so James has to call this correctly. And even so, might be able to get out some big damage onto the Snorlax before it's able to get this Belly Drum up. So here's the Ally Switch, as we expected to come out from Wolf's side of the field.
Oh,
but now,
like
how does does he call? He calls it! Oh my god! James actually calls this correctly!
That is
so much
insane.
Damage comes through.
That is such a big turn 1, and I mean, if each Trick Room doesn't even go up now, if the Excadrill doubles up into that slot, incredible play. And the Earthquake, yeah, gets that defense drop onto the Snorlax, so just so much damage. Guarantees the KO on Dusclops, and no Trick Room this time. Wow.
No Trick Room. Even with the Belly Drum, Snorlax is going to be so low that it's a risk to Gigantamax it.
One thing to remind the viewers is, like, going into these games, players actually had access to the opposing players' teams and moves, and so that can explain why James was maybe a little bit more confident going for that Phantasm, knowing at least Dusclops has that Ally Switch, because of course not all Dusclops carry it, but still, you have to make that prediction and lands it correctly. Really excellent turn 1 there.
Wow, I am so impressed with James's heads-up play. I mean, honestly, depending on how much damage that did for the Dragapult, it was just safe to go for the Max Phantasm anyway, right? Just in case the Snorlax was going for the Belly Drum, you just deny the ability to do that overall, depending on how much damage comes out there. So I think that that was such a good play coming out from James, and the fact that you knock out that Dusclops so fast means that you don't really have a way to set up the Trick Room safely anymore. So Snorlax kind of forced to go for the Gigantamax here as just to try to take advantage of as much of that Belly Drum as possible. Max Airstream now from Dragapult does find its mark into the Ribombee, which is a one-hit knockout. And again, this Dragapult has been absolutely smashing it.
Yeah, just being able to outspeed the Ribombee before he even gets that speed swap off. I mean, this Ribombee has literally done nothing in the last 2 games other than just feint, right? So Earthquake won't pick up the knockout onto the Snorlax, but covers all the options. The Max Steel Spike will come out and pick up the knockout onto this Dragapult, but it's still a pretty tricky position for Wolfe to be in. He is down, of course, 1 Pokemon. James gets a free switch in here as well. That Snorlax has taken a fair amount of damage, but yeah, I mean, like we were saying, I feel like turn 1 is just so important in this matchup, whether you get the Trick Room up or not, and yeah, no Indeedee this time around because Wolfe was basically predicting the Togekiss Extra Draw lead, saying, okay, Indeedee is really, really useless against it. I'm not going to bring it. James kind of calls him out on that, brings out the Dragapult, and calls it correctly. So, you know, for Wolfe to win now, he's going to have to, you know, make some good plays with protecting the Snorlax at the right time. And, of course, the Hatterene here can still set up Trick Room, but one play that James can make what's relatively safe is just going for something like a Dazzling Gleam and Iron Head, you know, just knock out the Hatterene. I think if you deny Wolfe from setting up Trick Room, there's pretty much no way for him to win.
Excadrill goes for the Iron Head into the Hatterene. Hatterene still hangs on, but Togekiss with the Dazzling Gleam. Is that going to be enough to pick up the knockout? A double into this Hatterene is going to be enough, so Hatterene can't get the Trick Room up even with the crit. I don't know if that mattered. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the Hatterene was at pretty low special defense, but I think Wolfe going for the only play that even gives him a chance of staying in this one. You can either hope to survive the double up or hope that, you know, James maybe messes up a little bit, doesn't go for the Iron Head onto the Hatterene, but now it's a 3v1. Togekiss can safely go for Follow Me or just even a Dazzling Gleam as Wolfe just doesn't have enough damage to hit everything all at once.
Wow. What clean play coming in from James. And the good news for Wolfe is that there is a lower bracket that they'll be able to fight their way back into. So now that they have a lot of experience against this team, I think that might help a